This brings us then neatly, gentlemen, to the question of the week. And the question of the week is, drumroll, should we allow AI agents to act autonomously inside organizations? My God, what a mouthful. Should we, boys?
Yeah, I think the answer is a conditional yes. I mean, it's not a hard no because the upside is too big to ignore. And I think it's kind of inevitable at this stage because we can see a shift where we are moving from AI as a tool, where the co-pilots, we use co-pilots that assist us, to AI as a coworker, where agents now are starting to act. And, to put more bluntly, I think we are not hiring software, we are hiring digital coworkers now. And it's a kind of worker that, never sleeps, but might get us sued. And the conditional part is, I think, lies between those lines. So a useful shorthand here could be, we can think chatbots as the software that can talk, co-pilots that can create stuff for us, like create an email, create code. And now we have agents that can act. And once AI can act across systems, the question, I think, stops being if it's helpful and becomes how we are going to manage it. Because here now we have the reality of accountability, right? Because agents don't remove responsibility from the work, they just reroute it. I mean, when something goes wrong, the regulator doesn't come for the model, and they don't tell the company, okay, they are using a 3 billion parameter AI, which obviously can't handle this job, so let's ignore this problem. They won't tell it, but they'll come after people who chose the agents, deployed it, and decided it was safe to run. So
and that of course goes back to IBM's very famous quote from the 1970s, 79 actually: computers should never be able to make management decisions because they cannot be held to account.
Definitely.
So Ansel, for all the cynics listening in, and I know there's quite a few cynics who tune into our podcast, they may turn around and say, well, how is this agent, a computer program, any different to a batch job running overnight that reconciles who knows what, the amount of checks sent into a bank? How is that different?
I think it's different because for the chatbots, I said they can talk, they answer questions, summarize, and explain. And, we have other type of AI software that can create stuff, but agents are the thing that does stuff, because we are now talking about large language models which can read, write, and act across a bunch of different domains. They can log into applications, call APIs, even they can discover the API themselves and decide which API endpoint to call. They can write code, they can send emails, they can move money from one place to another. So actually, we are not debating a sci-fi future here. We are talking about a near future where the employee that touched our data, that touched our Kubernetes cluster or our money, might be a cluster of GPUs with a job title. So it's not actually running a software that you can follow each action like the traditional software. It's more like you tell it a goal, you give it a goal, and you don't have any kind of information unless you have good engineering practices. You don't have any kind of visibility and information about what it's doing inside, the decisions that it's made. So it's very much different from running our, regular software that we used to run.
Exactly, because if you run a program against the same set of data, you'll get the same result. Now, let me bring Chris in there. So, Chris, Ansel talked about, a computer program can't be held to account. It's the person who deploys it. But if these agents are making decisions, because if you go to any organization, you can't work out exactly who built anything, right? Somebody might have forgot to log in or logged in anonymously. How can anybody hold the person who set this agent loose to account if we don't know what the agent's doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've seen this a lot of in our CCF, our continuous compliance framework as well, where we're struggling to integrate agents into it because the point of compliance is to hold people to account and show responsibility for certain pieces of security architecture. An AI can't be held responsible, as Ansel mentioned very neatly, is it's GPUs with a job title, and we can't put GPUs to account for anything that goes wrong. And the part that really struggles is, and this is a solution which the industry has come up with, is human in the loop, to say, right, an agent is just a loop that calls tools intelligently to do the next thing, or generates tokens, which we call intelligence. But it's just to call the tools in a loop to do something. And now at some point, some of those things might be dangerous. For example, taking some money from an account to pay for something which you've asked it to. Now most of the time it might be correct. It might say, oh, we suggest a new air fryer. Yours is crap, basically. You're going to say, yeah, perfect. I approve this transaction. Go for it. But sometimes it's going to want to make payments to buy Bitcoin, for example, something you might not want it to do. And so that's where the human in the loop comes in. And I don't think we have really good tools for human in the loop that fit into our current workflow as well. So for example, we could set an agent offer into the business and say, right, you could do whatever you like except these 3 things. Or you're allowed to do these 100 things and everything else needs approval. Where does the approval come in? Is it a Slack message? Is it an email? Does that slow things down? Is there an interface? Because currently, for engineers who have human in the loop, we have agents in our IDEs, in our software development environments, which means we set an agent off, and then we go and set another agent off and another agent off, and then we come to the first, and it's there waiting for us with a question, saying, should I do this, or is this code change okay, or that sort of thing. That's us actively engaging with the agents. But what we're talking about is autonomously acting in a business, which is setting it off and letting it do its thing in the background while we go and play golf.
The challenge is what if you have a rogue agent? What if you have an agent that's doing stuff you don't understand? So therefore, I'm sorry to sort of put words into your mouth. It sounds like you're saying the answer to the question is no. We shouldn't allow autonomous agents. There has to be a human in the loop. Otherwise, how can you control this stuff?
I think autonomous acting is fine if you give it a limited set of things which you're okay with it doing, right? That's okay. If you're allowing it to make payments, then I'd say no. My full answer to the question is it depends. But the real answer for a podcast setting, because it depends doesn't always work, the real answer is I don't think so yet, but I think we're pretty close to the models being accurate enough and not being easily jailbroken and easily prompt injected to be able to do that sort of stuff. And prompt injection, people think, oh, prompt injection is someone maliciously putting something in. That's true. But if you have an AI agent which automatically responds to your email, that's automatically prompt injectable because someone could send you an email with a prompt in it. And so the security pieces we don't quite understand yet. I think I read Martin Fowler referenced this somewhere, but I couldn't exactly pick up where, was the S in MCP is for security. It's because with security isn't built into the stuff natively yet. And that's the part we're still figuring out. So not yet, because once we can sort out the security thing to really lock it down in the same way we have SSO for applications or we have tooling for monitoring when people log into the wrong tools, in that same way, if we can sort the security part of agents, I'd say go ham, go crazy. Send me a Slack message when you want to make payments. But everything else, if I've asked you to do something, do what you think is right until you panic and then let me know and I can help you get to the right path again.
The original in the loop expression comes from control theory. There's a control loop. So once upon a time, a person in a factory or an engineer would cut a part. Well, then you automated that so the machine would cut out widgets, but a human would monitor it. And actually, at that moment in history, that work stopped being craft work and it started being, pretty boring factory work. And then we had 10 machines that were able to do 10 things, but a human would still watch. I think there's something nowadays. There's a factory. Is it one man and a dog factories where there's a security card with his dog and he monitors the whole thing to make sure it doesn't burn down. But all of that is understandable. We understand how machines work when they're cutting things or printing things, or we can always hit a stop button on a production line. What happens when our agents are doing work that we don't understand, or what happens when they're interacting? You famously, Claude Debussy, the musician, said music is the space in between the notes. What happens when the messages going between the agents are just too much for any human to understand? And then if things go wrong, can we stop runaway processes? So Ansel, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think this is part of the, governance or observability question, because now that we are switching to agents, this means agents can act faster and they can act at a larger scale, which means when something goes wrong, it goes wrong everywhere, all at once. So there should be different levels of autonomy. As Chris said, the highest level of autonomy is everything is handled by agents. All of the decisions are handled by agents, and humans are just there watching maybe dashboards or just, starting agents giving goals. And this is the highest level autonomy. And I think, agreeing with Chris, I think it's mostly a thought experiment right now. So broad human-like judgment across domains is not something that's really possible right now. What we can do is to build the required engineering tools around the agents, giving them only sandboxed environments, hardly specify what tools they can use, and specifying what they can see, because tools are agents' hands and eyes, because they can call APIs and they can see data. So if we specify what tools, which hands and which eyes they can use, I think we can come up to a point where it might be considered safe to run with the agents. But one thing that we need to be careful of, I think, and this is part of, giving the agents some kind of an HR file. So we need to treat agents like employees. Just like employees, we need to be the owner of the agent. We need to be informed about which scale does it work. We need to know about what's the worst that could happen if something goes wrong, and do we have a kill switch? So how long does it take to just stop the execution of this agent? Because even before you notice, it might be just thousands of millions of running code, running tools there. And the other thing is just keeping track of what the agent is doing by going into observability, just like we do with the other software that we create.
I have heard people say that in the new world, we won't really be programmers anymore, but we'll be managers and product. So if you've got a background in product management, prioritizing work, checking in with your people, holding them to account, then you will have a future as a human being, but your team will not be a team of people. It will be a team of agents. Does that align with what you've been seeing, Chris, or what you've been thinking about?
A week ago, I would have said no, but now I'm saying yes, because I've been experimenting with some of the models and some of the coding agents to go and do some software bits. And so what I would do now is I take software tasks, for example, and to express them, usually between humans, like if me and also work on the same product, I could give him a very small description of something that needs to change in the product or something needs to be fixed, and he can infer the rest. For an agent, we need to give it a bit more information, unless you want it to be super creative. But so what I now do is I pick a ticket, and then I transcribe my own voice while I walk the dog to describe exactly what I needed to do and what the context around that is. And then I set off an agent and I say, right, go and do that thing to this repository. And I've been very surprised. Previously, I was quite disappointed whether it didn't really work. It wrote, I said before, it wrote 140% of the code to reach 70% of the goal. And that was quite annoying. But now they actually are getting quite good. Like I've been using GPT 5.1's Codex Max. It's really good at like taking that information and then coming back with what I would have done anyway.
Right.
And so previously I would have said no, because I thought our models are, they're trending towards zero. They're not going to get much better. But anecdotally from my recent usage of it, it's actually getting pretty good. And so the sort of managers of agents is quite accurate and painful to accept at the same time. But that is what I've been starting to do, because I've been solving bugs which would normally take me hours to solve in a couple minutes. And it found bugs which are really, really difficult to go and debug, but one line change, for example.
I guess you're shit out of luck then if you don't know how to coordinate. So I think one of Container Solutions' superpowers, shameless plug at this point, one of our superpowers is that we're good with computers and we're good with people. That's our sort of whole business model, is that we're really good with computers and we're okay with people, which sets us apart from the rest of the industry. We know how to organise and get stuff done. What happens if you're not much of a coordinator? What happens if you're a really old school geek who loves to be in the tech, but you don't really have a feel for prioritisation? Where does your future lie?
I honestly have no idea. I've said the same about mechanics. I've had the fear about vehicle mechanics for a long time with electric cars coming out. If electric cars are what people say they are, and they're going to take over the world, and it's all going to be electric cars, what happens to mechanics? Do they have to become electric mechanics? Probably. And this is where like upskilling in your late 40s and 50s and 60s is important, because it's going to change from underneath you.
think I just take early retirement. I think, by the way, you said would they become electromechanics? I think the word you're looking for is electricians. I mean, how do you go? How do you go from messing around with the petrol device to basically batteries and I mean stuff I don't even know anything about? I'm not a hardware guy. I'm a software guy, so I don't understand electric cars or actual cars.
But I mean,
Right.
yeah. So you gotta adapt and keep up with. So you gotta have to become a coordinator and people person potentially.
So the truth is, guys, we can't definitively answer this question right now because we're still figuring it out. So, Ansel, if I just pop back to you, what is your advice nowadays to our customers or to your friends in the community? Obviously, we can't just say we're not going to innovate, right? We're not innovating. We're all technologists, so we know we've got to move forward. We're scared about contagion. We know that when systems become over-dependent on each other, when something breaks over there, everything breaks. So the kill switch is essential. What else are we telling our customers? How are we advising them to move forward into this brave new world of, autonomous agents?
I think now or later, all of the companies or organizations are going to start using agents at some point. I mean, some of them, the ones that I work with, already started using, but as Chris put it, they don't know how to handle this. Actually, it's like a smoke for them now. So I think the best way to start working with agents is just get out something, just create an agent and see how it works, but put it in read-only mode. So let the agent propose actions, create the stuff you want, call the tools that you need, and just watch it how it works. Just watch how it works. And then if you are confident with that step, you can just switch into shadow mode, which means they can let the agents run alongside humans. So it makes decisions, you log them and you compare, would it have done the same thing? How often does it, escalate? What does it miss? Again, you don't let agents take actions yet. And, the core principle here is run agents in a sandbox before you let them touch anything real. So just give them fake data, fake accounts, fake money, and see what they do when things get weird. Because creating agents is not as straightforward as creating a regular software piece, because we are not just working with software that crash. We are working with software that can talk back to you and sometimes make, secret stuff. I don't know if you've seen the paper from Anthropic, which talks about sleeper agents. So the models could be trained with a backdoor, which would which would have them behave differently under test and under production environment. So it's not just a regular software anymore. And, I think the most important thing is just red teaming them. So red team your agents the way you red team your security. Try prompt injection, try nasty user behavior, because sometimes even the models are, have precautions for safety. I think they can still be broken. Just yesterday, my daughter sent me some questions from her homework to, compare it with the answers that ChatGPT would give her to check if the answers were correct. ChatGPT just refused giving answers, telling me this looks like a homework. I want to answer this. But I switched the ChatGPT model, just leveled it up to a thinking version, thinking ChatGPT, which just happily, gave me the answer. So there are lots of things to try when you are developing an agent. The problem is the agents are non-deterministic. It's not like you are calling a function and expecting the same result every time. It might, respond with different replies, different answers. So it's the most important thing. I think if you become really careful about, and we mentioned the observability part as well, and all the metrics, and when you just care about this stuff, it might be a bit, better experience in terms of creating your own agents.
Advice. It sounds to me also like a set of guidelines are emerging within container solutions about read-only mode, testing stuff first, experimenting read-only, and then getting all the way to red teaming. It is true these bits of software are non-deterministic, and that changes the game for all of us computer programmers. with that being said, we've all been building big systems for a very long time, systems with humans in them, and humans are pretty non-deterministic as well. So I think in terms of systems building, and especially around testing, we know what we're doing here. What about you, Chris? What advice are you giving right now, and what are you seeing?
I'd say two things is one, realize that in every gold rush is the people who sell the shovels who get rich, right? That's the first part is if you're not building, AI is going to make a change to the industry. And if you're not building something which sells shovels in the AI world, then you might if you're trying to use AI to build a simple CRM system, for example, there's a lot of CRMs out there and people could generate the same thing as you could. The one thing I wish people could see is that they think using AI in their business is going to make their business be faster than their competitors. And they negate the fact that their competitors have access to the exact same AI and they're having exact same thoughts and they're trying to do exactly the same thing, right? So there's three levels to that, which I see is one, not using AI, which in places is correct, and especially in creative parts and that sort of thing. I like to read stuff from humans. Then there's two is as a business, you're going to have to use AI to stay up to date with your competitors. Otherwise, your competitors are just going to scream past you. And then three is the AI native world, where can you build something in the AI era, which trumps the stuff in the previous layer, the same way we never had CRM until we had CRM. Is there stuff in the AI world out there which we should be building, which isn't built yet, which AI has enabled us to now build, which we couldn't build before? Focus on that part. And then the second piece of advice I have is use AI's deep research function to keep up every week with the latest news in AI. Everything is constantly shifting. You've got MCP, you've got 8A, you've got RAG, you've got AI chat interfaces, you've got new models coming out, you've got coding interfaces, you've got different things for different places, you've got thinking stuff for research, you've got notebook LMs, and you've got Gemini coming out and OpenAI. Everybody's competing as a really fresh and moving space. If you want to really think about AI and use it effectively, you need to sort of know what things are happening underneath it and what the industry is doing. And so use AI's deep research to research the last week in AI and get yourself some information about what's actually happening in AI and stay up to date with that. Because one, that's going to generate ideas in your mind because you're going to read that and 2 days later something is going to click. And it wouldn't have clicked if you didn't know about MCP, for example, and that something's capable. Make it easy on yourself. Use deep research. Give yourself a 10-minute read every week. Just stay up to date with what there is. That's already 80% of the value of using AI, because that's going to give you the ideas you need. Two is just stay up to date. Use AI to stay up to date with where your competitors are also going to use AI. You do not want to be the first level, which is completely left behind because you haven't used it yet.
And I suppose my final bit of advice would be to the leaders and managers tuning in. That tends to be my domain these days as I enter my autumn years. Remember, it is never the inventors of a technology that dictate its destiny, but it's the first users, it's the children. So we, my generation, we were the ones who took the cloud forward. We are unlikely to be the generation that take generative AI forward. But of course, you are, Chris, and you are as well, Onsel. This is a very important lesson for the businesses tuning in. What got you so far is unlikely to get you to the next step. So the workforce question, making sure that you've got AI native engineers and people who think in a certain way, because they're the ones who are going to take this forward. Now, okay, let's answer the question definitively. I'll start with you, Onsel. Should we allow agents to make autonomous decisions in organizations? Yes or no?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
A cautionary yes.
Okay, well, I'll just be the person who says no then. I think we need to kick the tires on this a bit more, but the truth is we need to return to this in 6 to 12 months. So on that happy note, this is the end of this section of the podcast. This was our big question of the week. We hope that you have enjoyed it. Keep an eye out on our LinkedIn feed or for our calls to actions, because it sounds to me like we're cooking some guidelines for how to move forward with this. As soon as we have them, we'll make them available to download.